Hey, hello everyone and welcome. We'll get started here in a few moments. All right, welcome everyone. All right, if you want to take a moment and introduce yourself in the chat by providing your name, college, and whether you currently have a CPL program at your college. And I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar session today. So my name's Alicia Myrick. I'm a Director of Initiatives here on the CALE team. And I'll allow my colleague to introduce herself as well.
Hello, I'm Gloria Moise with CALE.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to welcome everyone to our session today. And so we'd also like to welcome, this is kind of part of our HBCU Week Extended Cut. So this session is part of our CALE's HBCU Week. And HBCU Week grew out of an executive order back in 1980 by President Jimmy Carter to expand the capacity of historically Black colleges and universities to provide quality education. It's observed in many diverse ways across the country, and this year, CALE is extending that occasion into a second week, starting yesterday, by celebrating the impact and collaboration of the HBCU Adult Learner Initiative created by the Lumina Foundation. So we'd like to welcome you guys all today. Like we said, go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat, provide your name, college, and whether you currently have a CPL program at your college. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. As This afternoon, if you're on the Eastern time zone, with a little bit about CALE. And so CALE exists to promote and support improved pathways for adults looking to bridge education with a career. We're a national nonprofit with a broad network of members that span post-secondary education, industry, and workforce developers. We help build organizational partnerships that center adult learners and workers in initiatives that span the continuum from education to employment. These include workforce and economic developers, chambers of commerce, post-secondary educators, employers and industry groups, and foundations, and other mission-aligned organizations. So if you're not a CALE member, we'd love to have you consider joining us and then talk a little bit about our CALE conference this year, which is in a little less than 60 days here, November 11th through 14th. And this year we're going to be in Memphis. So registration is now open and you can, I think we'll put a link to the registration or the conference page in the chat. The full agenda is also available on the CALE conference page, but this is just kind of a quick overview of our conference, and we hope that you'll join us in Memphis in November. So as mentioned at the start of the program, this session is an extension of kind of our HBCU Week Extended Cut Edition, where we're celebrating the impact and collaboration of the HBCU Adult Learner Initiative created by the Lumina Foundation. Just a quick overview of it. It launched in 2021 as part of Lumina's HBCU portfolio and its student success portfolio for four-year institutions. And so we are in our final year. It's been a three-year project where the goal was to support institutional stability and student success, particularly for adult students. There were 5 four-year colleges in North Carolina that were part of this grant, as well as some other partners, including the Center for Post-Secondary Innovation at the University of South Alabama, the Frederick D. Patterson Research Institute, who was our evaluation partner. And so we are excited to be part of this grant, and we've got some other great activities scheduled this week as part of our celebration of HBCU Week and this grant. So our conversation today, so we want to start with kind of just a brief overview of credit for prior learning, or CPL, discussion of the top obstacles in launching a CPL program and how to overcome them, and then we'll have kind of a Q&A. And so we want this to be an interactive session and leverage some of the peer learning and experiences of CPL programs that may be on this webinar with us today. So if you have some things to share, please feel free to jump in the chat and share your experiences and answers any questions, so that we can have kind of that interactive peer learning piece going on today. All right, and so we're going to go ahead and get started with talking about what is credit for prior learning. And so this is Kale's kind of frequently used standard definition of what CPL is. CPL can go by many names. So my credit for prior learning assessment, lifelong learning, recognition of prior learning. So different institutions, different folks use different names for kind of the same process, but it all effectively refers to the same thing, which is the learning that is obtained by a student outside of the college, their college classroom, of which the college can award them credit if they can demonstrate that they have met the learning outcomes at a college level to the satisfaction of a subject matter expert, who is usually a faculty member. So it is a faculty-driven process, as the faculty members are making the assessment of the learning to make sure that credit can be awarded effectively, and that it maintains the academic rigor and standards of the university. Kale has provided standards for credit for prior learning for decades at this point, and there are a lot of components that we can pull out of it. And again, we want to focus on the fact that this is credit for prior learning. The assessment is based on college level learning, not experience, not how many years they've worked at a job, but that they have gained learning that can be demonstrated in various ways. These ways can be through portfolios, through challenge exams, through skills assessment, oral interviews. There are many different types of credit for prior learning, and they can be all utilized in this under this large umbrella. So credit for prior learning. So this is kind of focusing on some of the why credit for prior learning. And so again, it provides that opportunity for adult students to receive institutional recognition in the form of course credit for skills and knowledge gained through formal and informal training and career expertise. Again, this can include work experience, military and volunteer service, on-the-job training, non-credit courses and learning, employer training that they've done as part of their, their career or their work. And so it just encompasses so much. And looking at some of the benefits, we have this study called the PLA Boost, which results from 72 institutions, and it is a joint collaboration with the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education, WICHE, who received funding from Lumina Foundation and Strada Education back in 2018 to 2020. On average, students earning CPL or non-military CPL are 30% more likely to complete their degrees. And then it highlights some numbers for some other demographics, including it raises to 32% for Hispanics, 28% for Black students, 36% for community college students, and 33% for Pell recipients. So the idea is for them to complete faster and to save time and money. And so what does that time and money look like? So on average, it can save between $15,000 to $10,000, depending on the sector that the institution is part of. An estimated adult time savings in earning degrees with 12 or more CPL credits, they can save about 9 to 14 months. But institutions also benefit. So oftentimes, students who earn CPL took an average of 17.6 more course credits than non-CPL students. And CPL also supports enrollment. 84% of likely enrollees say that CPL offerings would influence their choice of college or university. So we're saving time and money for students, but institutions are also seeing that students are taking more credit hours, and it supports enrollment, their sense of belonging at the university. So there are many data points that point to why CPL can be a great benefit for students and the institution alike. So now we want to get into understanding what CPL looks like at some of our institutions on this webinar today. So this question, we're going to launch a poll here. What is your greatest obstacle to launching a CPL program on your campus? And if you complete the poll, but you can also put this in the chat if you want for further discussion. All right, so as they're coming in, I see the biggest one so far seems to be faculty buy-in with about 50%, and then followed by lack of awareness about CPL. And I'll give it a few more seconds. Looks like we've got a good amount of folks participating. All right. All right, great. Thank you. So the biggest obstacle here seems to be faculty buy-in, and then followed by lack of awareness about CPL. So we're going to talk through some of these. And again, feel free to chime in the chat, and my colleague Gloria will be monitoring the chat and providing some input. And then we have a Q&A as well that we'll get to toward the end. So feel free to add some of your questions in there as well. All right, so how do I learn more about CPL and increase awareness on my campus? So Kale can definitely help with that. And so we want to highlight some of our resources, and then we'll look and get some thoughts from the chat. So since 2010, Kale has led the field in examining the CPL impact, practice, policy, and equity. These are some key recent research reports that are available on our website to our members. The PLA Boost, which I mentioned earlier and showed some of that research from. We have the Equity Paradox back in 2021, Attracting Adult Learners with Credit for Prior Learning, as well as a brief from our CPL Equity Awards that highlights what some institutions have been doing to increase CPL awareness and equity within that process. These are all on our website and some great starting points for understanding how to engage research or engage CPL and increase awareness on your campus. For those that are Kale members, Kale also offers a CPL Quick Start Kit to help members be more effective and impactful in their CPL implementation. So this toolkit includes some sample policies, process maps, talking points. It includes some marketing materials, as well as micro courses and on-demand webinars, key research articles, and other resources. This toolkit is located in the Kale Members Hub. And so if you're interested and you are a Kale member, please feel free to check that out. All right, so Gloria, do we have any comments or things from the chat about our first area, our first obstacle, increasing awareness on campus?
Not yet. We have some questions for some of the ones that are coming up very shortly.
Okay. All right. Oh, and let me share the results of our survey. I thought I hit that. Are y'all able to? Those are the results from the questions. So we had about 23% said that this was a big area. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to add them to the chat or the Q&A. And we can always come back a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so how do I obtain senior leader buy-in on my CPL program? So we had about 8% of the respondents indicated that this was an issue. And so we'll talk about some strategies here. So it's one of the biggest ones is to tie CPL to high priority institutional goals. So example, one of our ALI, HBCU ALI grantees, Elizabeth City State University, they connected CPL to adult learner recruitment and retention performance goals. So that way you're able to have um, ways to both track it to metrics, and it's something that everyone can get involved in. Everyone knows what it is because it is tied to high priority institutional goals. Doing CPL in a siloed manner in different departments can often be difficult, so this is one of the ways if you are struggling for senior leadership buy-in. Another way is to show the potential impact on the college's position, right? So we talked a little bit about it was 84% of students said that they would be more likely to attend a college if they knew that it had CPL. So consider that a marketing tool. And then one of the ways that you can do this, are there other colleges in the area using CPL? Because they could be attracting some of the students uh, that might be attracted to your institution as well. And then asking that question, is this an opportunity for our college to be a regional leader? So how do you know if other colleges in your area are using CPL? And so Kale has created, last year this launched, the CPL Provider Network. And so this allows adult learners to effectively navigate post-secondary institution that offers credit for prior learning. So again, given CPL's proven ability to advance students in institutional success, this network is an invaluable resource. It is a free one-stop connection to post-secondary institutions where the prior learning experiences of adult learners can be recognized. So as faculty, as staff, as administration, senior leaders, this is a great opportunity for you to also use this network to determine what other institutions in your regions are doing in regards to CPL. So we have the link here, and this QR code will take you directly to the CPL provider network so that you can search through and determine if you find if there are other areas, other colleges in your area that might be offering this. All right, Gloria, do we have any questions or any comments in the chat related to getting senior leadership buy-in?
Yes, there was a question about how to scale up programs. So you may get one program started with using CPL, but then you want to develop a more campus-wide coordinated strategy. What might be some solutions to that?
Um, I think one of the biggest ones is first really determining what types of CPL that you're going to be using. It's and to scale up that way, right? So instead of focusing on, I mean, there's many different ways of doing it. So what ways do you guys have the buy-in and the resources to support it? So if that is, if you have a program that's doing great with portfolios, that might be a great way to continue to scale up the work versus trying to kind of start something new somewhere else. We also, Kale also offers some great technical assistance and webinars that focus on the different types of ways to scale up and looking at the different methods from portfolio management to crosswalking, which could be mapping industry recognized certifications directly to courses, and then giving students who they might have completed, a Google digital marketing certificate, giving them credit for that is a great way to kind of start to scale up to scale it to the university level.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think the next question has to do with the next topic, so we'll wait till then. But others, we encourage you to add your comments. I'm loving the suggestions that are being put in the chat from folks who are actually implementing programs as well.
Okay, great. Yeah. So again, we want this to be some peer sharing, so you're seeing firsthand what works on different campuses. All right, and so this was kind of our biggest obstacle that we found in the poll. About 51% of uh, respondents said that getting faculty buy-in is their greatest obstacle to launching a CPL program on campus. So how can we overcome this? What are some strategies? So provide some technical assistance to faculty on the academic rigor of CPL and its value to students and the college. Helping faculty understand that they are leading this process. We're not trying to take over their responsibilities. They are the ones who are determining courses that are available for CPL. They can help determine credentials. They're the ones developing the back end of the program. So again, emphasize that key role that faculty play in helping to assess prior learning for credit. Start with a coalition of the willing. So faculty and programs who want to offer CPL as an opportunity for their students is a great way to start. And we call these kind of CPL champions. These are folks who are going to get out there. They're going to show up to Senate meetings. They're going to show up and talk about how CPL, how they've used it in their department and ways, and they can help also provide ways to kind of scale it up to other departments as needed. If possible, and Kale recommends this, to compensate faculty that do CPL assessments where needed. So we hosted a webinar back in April, and Atlanta Metro State College was one of our participants, and we'll share some of these links out post-webinar to that webinar. They talked about how they were able to offer compensation to faculty who were doing assessments. And compensation often can come in the form of money, reduced course loads, or course releases. There are many different ways that faculty can be fairly compensated for the work that they're putting in, because it does take work. It does take time, and it does take again, time away from teaching to develop rubrics, to evaluate rubrics. So you just want to make sure that we are, if possible, compensating faculty. And again, the easiest way, I think, is that find those faculty champions on your campuses and have them go kind of on the road and talk about how beneficial it's been for their program, and the benefits that they've seen, and how you can use those, what they've learned, their lessons learned, to help scale it up for other departments. So we did talk about technical assistance, and so Kale has created some customized technical assistance and professional develop, as well as some kind of free toolkits. And so some technical assistance that we offer some webinars starting from the basic starting blocks, CPL fundamental and benefits, then from the ground up, building a foundations of a CPL program, as well as assessing some of the prior learning institutional-based assessments. Process mapping is another way for understanding how we get from point A to point B. So we start looking at, from when a student enrolls and they're interested in CPL, how do they get, what is their process? And then what is the process on the institutional side from getting from I want CPL to actually getting that credit awarded. Again, I talked a little bit about crosswalking, which again is employer training or industry recognized credentials to college credit. For most of our all of our technical assistance offerings, we have remote and in-person models are offered, and with a mix of proctored and full instructor-led formats. Some are self-paced and some are fully asynchronous options are also available. We also have a free publicly available toolkit, our free resource to make credit for prior learning work for your post-secondary institution. If you scan that QR code, that will take you directly to that website, and then that is the link as well. So lots of different offerings that Kale can kind of help you with in scaling up your CPL program or building the foundations of it. Are there any questions, Gloria, that we can talk about in terms of building that faculty buy-in?
Yes, a few questions. So there's a question about formal certification for faculty who act as CPL evaluators. Is there something that we would recommend, or if not, what training do we recommend for someone who's new to CPL? So of our offerings or other offerings, what would you suggest?
Yeah, so if they're new to CPL, we want to, make sure we start kind of with like from the ground up, building the foundations. And then we also, again, we have a workshop where we work on assessing prior learning for institutional-based assessments. And so that helps faculty build portfolios and rubrics for oral exams or skills assessments, whatever ways that the institution wants to build in rubrics or institutional assessments for credit for prior learning. So Kale offers several of those. The question was about formal certification. Okay. I'm not sure if there's necessarily a formal certification in terms of like you are, formally certified to service that, but there are certainly lots of great technical assistance and CPL programs. There's also we have the ACE National Guide, which has also identified several kind of industry recognized credentials or employer trainings, and they have provided some background for how to uh, assess those for prior learning, and they provide recommendations for how many credits might be uh, awarded for a specific certification or employer training. Also, some of your professional organizations might offer some guidance that might be helpful, and particularly in specific subject matter areas.
Fantastic. So there was a question about the range of compensation for faculty who are doing, more detailed evaluations, for instance, portfolio assessments. And Tumman spoke up in the chat and talked about the CPL community of practice on the Kale Member Hub and how they've been having some discussions about different ranges from $50 to $250 a portfolio, for instance, or $30 an hour for external contractors who might be doing that assessment for an institution as just examples. But a lot of what we hear, I think, and you can speak to this, Alicia, has to do with really the resources that the institution has available and what's your history or a potential, I mean, your ongoing tradition for providing additional support to faculty. So following in with guidelines of other additional work you might be asking them to do, that also shapes what you might offer for this particular practice. But there was a question here that you might want to speak to about how to find the resources if you're kind of cash-strapped organization or institution to actually pay faculty. Any examples that we can point to of where the resources come from?
Some programs charge students for the administrative part of assessing the prior learning. So we're not charging students necessarily, for the credit hour, but some institutions might charge $50 or $100 for a portfolio assessment. And so that might be one method to look at how to compensate faculty members, because again, where there is a cost to that for the institution. So utilizing funds from the actual work that's been done might be one way that we've seen. There is Kale does have a paper for members on kind of the business side of funding. Just writing this down to make sure we can include that in the when we send this out. So they do have a white paper on that, and that might be a good resource as well in the member resource section.
Thank you. Okay. I think those are the only two questions related to the faculty buy-in right now.
Okay. All right, so how do I help students learn more and engage with CPL programs? Because, right, we can do all this work to scale up all these programs. We can find ways to compensate faculty, but if the students aren't taking advantage of it, what are we really doing? And so this was about 6% of respondents indicated that this was an area that they shared that they were struggling with, or this was an obstacle. So strategies for student engagement: develop an explicit institutional marketing campaign for your CPL program. It's got to start at the beginning when students are interested in the institution. So your admissions folks are great folks to start talking, because they're going to have some of the first conversations. Also your advisors, but then make sure your faculty know about this so that the students know that it's an option, and it's something that students can be provided information. Having a CPL landing page where students can find frequently asked questions, or just know where's the first step if I have all this experience that I'm looking to see what I can do with it. Where do I go? Who is the person I talk to? Is there a dedicated person, a dedicated advisor, and just making sure that that information is clear to the students. if you're going to tell the students about it, you've got to make sure that we train faculty and staff and anyone else who engages with students to encourage students to explore CPL. So again, going back from that very first contact with admissions, faculty, your student support staff, even your student services staff, if they're having these conversations with students, they're getting to know, they're working with a student planning an event, and they learn that the student, has a extensive background in event planning. Where could they go to leverage that for potential credit? If you are a CALE member, you can use the Credit Predictor Standard tool to help identify students who can take advantage of CPL. And so that is a member resource that students can, or the institutions can use to help identify, again, and to help market and to streamline the process for getting college credit or getting CPL for commonly used, commonly known experiences. CALE has worked with Complete College America to kind of create some targeted marketing that can be used to create targeted marketing for your college. And so this is an example, and this is again a CALE member resource. Where you can create these. These can be put up on campus. Again, we've got an adult learner on the picture, and it talks about what credit for prior learning is and how they can take the next step. Who's that contact? And so these are great ways. These can be, sent out to if you have an adult listserv or any ways that you're targeting certain students that meet that are considered adult learners. This could be a great way to leverage that. And then I mentioned the Credit Predictor Standard, but we also have a technology platform called Credit Predictor Pro. And so many colleges and universities are using kind of spreadsheets and emails to track the progress and success of CPL. And so CALE has launched the Credit Predictor Pro, which is an online platform that makes the CPL process more efficient. It guides students through the process of documenting their work and learning experiences prior to or in between their college years. And automatically recommends appropriate PLA or CPL options based on the institution's CPL offerings and policies. And so again, there's a standard version of this, and there's also kind of an upgraded platform that members can purchase to help leverage this. All right. Do we have any questions about
Yes. So there's a question about, has anyone had any positive experiences in using advising or advisors to identify and advocate for CPL candidates? So maybe you could talk a little bit about the role of advisors in this, in the whole CPL process.
Right. So advisors a lot of times are going to be having those one-on-one conversations with students. Again, this is a faculty-led process. So putting those faculty and if you're using professional advisors together to talk about what are the advisors seeing, what are students coming in, and this is also being engaged in kind of the local community and seeing what are your students coming in with, and what are areas that we can quickly kind of identify, maybe employer trainings that we can leverage for credit for prior learning. So I think the key is to making sure advisors, first of all, they know what credit for prior learning is, and then they know that it exists in many different forms, because my background was in challenge exams with the language department. So I definitely knew about that, but I will admit back in my early years, I didn't know about portfolios and other ways that we could leverage this learning. So making sure that advisors know that it's not just CLEP and IB, but that some departments might offer portfolios or skills assessments, or that there's some courses that just automatically might be granted credit based on a crosswalk that was completed. So really it's kind of that collaboration, interdepartmental collaboration, that we have to kind of engage in to make sure that everyone is involved and engaged in the process.
Great. And so someone asked a question about they noted that the focus on student engagement is important. And is there any data on the impact of CPL on admissions and recruitment rates?
We have, CALE has the never enrolled student survey, which kind of talks a little bit about that. That's where we talk to students who did not enroll to kind of see why and how, what were those kind of obstacles. And that might be helpful to understand kind of where our students are. I know there are some other resources in the CALE Member Hub in terms of student engagement and marketing to adult learners that might also be beneficial. They're was a marketing to your adult learner, and there might be some pre-cons that might address that as well.
In our,
So
as part of the Kale conference.
as part of the Kale conference, yes, correct. Sorry. So my brain's working faster, but yeah. So we do have some resources on that, and so those are for some of our members, and we can certainly get into those if you go through the Kale member hub. I know there's some, and there might be some free resources on the website.
Sure. And I'll add to that, you'd previously noted the data point about, 84% of never enrolled students that they're more likely to enroll in an institution if they knew it had credit for prior learning. That's significant. Also, Kale is in the process of conducting some new research to develop a CPL maturity model, basically looking at how institutions grow their CPL programs over time and the impact on student engagement. It's a partnership we have with Sophia Learning. And we just launched this new project. So one, we are going to explore this question of, student engagement as part of CPL programs within these institutions that are our partners. We're seeking 30 diverse college institutional partners of different types who want to participate, and a small stipend will be offered. So I'll drop a link to that information in the chat in a moment if you're interested in applying. But in answer to your question, stay tuned. More research is coming on this particular issue around recruitment retention of students as a result of CPL. And I will defer to Brooke about the question of where the Kale conference will be next. I think Pittsburgh, if after Memphis. We'll see.
I mean, I don't think we've announced it yet.
Oh, sorry.
So Gloria just gave you a little hint there, but it will be in Pittsburgh.
All right. So all right, thanks, Brooke. All right, so and then the last kind of obstacle that we asked about in the chat: how do I measure the impact of CPL? So we had about 12% of the respondents indicate that this was what they consider their greatest obstacle. All right, and so we're all in higher education, and so we know the importance of having those metrics and that data to stand behind to tell our story. So what are some strategies for measuring impact? So the key is to determine kind of what key questions you want to ask about your CPL program, and then kind of develop the metrics. Again, if you're a member, use the the credit predictor standard to help kind of identify students who can take advantage of CPL. And so there's some kind of questions and things that we need to think about when we're talking about the awareness of of the metrics and the data we want to track. The first step that I would recommend is to engage your institutional research or institutional effectiveness office. You want to kind of make sure you develop a rationale for CPL data collection and the research questions that you're going to ask. Measure journey and student successes, and you want to make sure that you are consistent with the data tracking so that you're actually being able to tell a story. And that you're able to provide the value add that the CPL has, determine kind of the weak or challenge points that you can use to improve, and what you're doing well, because that's the story that you definitely want to sell and tell to everyone, to your incoming students, to your senior leadership, faculty, anything like that. Again, we talked a little bit about this. Determining what you would measure is kind of one of those crucial points. What specific criteria will you track? The number of students attempting CPL? Are you looking for how many credits are earned versus credits attempted? Types of CPL utilized. I think this one's a real big one. Are students utilizing those portfolios, crosswalks, challenge exams? What are the more commonly used types and what isn't? And that might help you determine where to put more resources into. Looking at the total credit hours earned through CPL, and then that can be even broken down into the type of CPL versus the total credit hours saved or total tuition dollars saved. Again, that time and money savings is a great advertisement, and so that might be something that is worth utilizing. Impacts on student data. Are you Are you recruiting more students? Are you retaining them? Are the CPL students completing faster, or are they completing more often than your general student population? Consider what data you may already be tracking. And also, it's important to consider what your institution has the capacity to provide in terms of utilizing dashboards and anything of that nature to kind of just help. Again, this helps tell your story, and it can help make the case for increasing or adding to faculty compensation, or how you're marketing to it, how you're marketing this to students. So again, this was measuring the impact of a CPL program is important. It often is an afterthought, I think, sometimes. But I think if it's done right and you put the time and the effort into it, it can pay dividends in helping to get that senior leadership buy-in, as well as the faculty buy-in, and help kind of increase that lack of awareness about CPL. Because if we're having the data to back up why it's working or why we're using it, then that helps with our marketing. Do you have any particular specific questions about number 5, the measuring the impact of the CPL program?
Might be helpful if I get off mute. I do think there is a question in the chat about academic rigor, and I think this ties to the question of impact as well. And how do we ensure that that CPL is meeting the academic rigor of the institutions?
And that's where, the faculty are making that assessment. They are looking at the learning outcomes of the learning experience in question, and they are comparing that to the learning outcomes of courses at the institution. And we're actually evaluating, do we think that the student met that learning outcome, and to what degree? And keeping in mind, that it might not be 100%, but is a student necessarily, meeting the learning outcomes 100% as well when they complete a course? If you don't feel a particular learning experience matches up to the rigor of the institution, that is valid, because there is a difference in terms of college level learning and experience. And so our goal is that with the work with the faculty and getting faculty engaged and trained on assessing, that we are addressing that question, and that the faculty are making that determination that this meets the academic rigor. CPL is typically most likely offered for a lot of our entry-level courses. So, we're not necessarily, giving students 3,000 or 4,000 level credit. So just looking at your courses and what courses your institution is choosing to offer CPL for, I think is also important in considering the rigor.
Thank
Great
you.
question.
And this very interesting and great debate happening in the chat around what receives rigor or not. I would just affirm what Alicia said about really engaging your faculty around determining that. Oftentimes, faculty who are resistant to CPL raise the rigor criticism as a way of suggesting that it's not something the institution should be engaged in. But we're in no way affirming or suggesting that any institution should diminish its rigor to implement its CPL. We think that it can be implemented in a way that maintains the standards of the institution, while also allowing for greater opportunities for adult learners to indicate what they know and have learned related to the learning outcomes of particular courses in accord with that rigor. And I would suggest that that could be the same of other alternative learning styles like Sophia or other types of courses. So again, the focus here is on having your faculty evaluate these options and ensuring that they are meeting the rigor of the institution. Okay. Okay, so now we're moving into our just open Q&A session, and would love to have you either type in the chat or come off of mute to ask any additional questions that you have. I do have one that I want to go back to, Alicia. It was put in the chat about the resources that are available to help faculty walk through a CPL assessment process. Can you talk about that? And we know that the range of faculty engagement varies depending on the type of CPL method used. So, for instance, if you're using CLEP or some kind of standardized exam, then it's simply a matter of determining what the level of passing rate needs to be in order to allow the student to receive credit. But for the ones that require more faculty engagement, can you talk a little bit about what resources are available to help them in the assessment process?
Um, so we go to the Kale Member Hub has several kind of the courses that we offer, the training models. I believe there are also some quick start kits. There's a quick start portfolio kit that kind of starts the idea of a portfolio, some questions to ask if you're looking at adding portfolios at your institution, just some things to think through when starting. And then kind of once you move from getting it going, I think at that point some of the training models might be helpful. And again, they're asynchronous, synchronous, instructor-led, self-paced, so many different ways to kind of to get up based on the type of um, uh, CPL that you're using. So again, for the standardized exams, a lot of those are kind of well established. And then for some of the institutional based assessment, again, that's going to be based on the institution. So that's something that the institution has to work on. And so I think those are great things. For some of the crosswalking or using industry recognized certifications, there's some, like I mentioned, the ACE National Guide is kind of a good resource to start from. So if you're just kind of poking around just to see what's out there and how they're using or how they've evaluated some of these trainings and what they're recommending. And so they might recommend for a particular training, this is like 3 lower level courses. And then you could do your own evaluation at your own institution to kind of see, and that would help, I think, kind of understand how the process works. In really determining what learning outcomes this credential has or this course has, and how it matches to the outcomes at at your institution.
Mhm. Well, there's an interesting question about the use of AI for portfolio assessment and whether or not we've seen any great examples of that. I'd love to see, whatever you know about that, Alicia, but also if anybody's had an experience of using an AI-enabled portfolio assessment tool in your own institution.
I have not engaged with any institutions currently using it. We do talk about it in our training. It can be a good tool, but as with any kind of use of AI, we constantly have to make sure we're following up and doing kind of that back end work to make sure it's accurate. But I have not currently engaged with any institutions that have, so I'm not sure if there's others in the chat that want to share.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't
Sorry.
understand. Jesse said he was, or Jesse, he or she, I'm not sure, was talking about students using AI for their portfolios versus not in the assessment. Okay.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So that would probably need to, I have again, that would probably need to be addressed like through the academic integrity policy. So making sure that in your academic integrity policy, you're talking about CPL. I mean, most student conduct policies talk about students as the time they're enrolled. Again, I haven't heard any, and I think you would kind of use the same methods that you would use for evaluating academic misconduct in your courses. Again, when you're talking about portfolios, maybe, I'm not sure, that would be the one that I think might be the one that comes to mind. In a portfolio, a student would also need to include demonstrated or documents of the learning. So we're not just kind of using what they're saying, but they would need to provide some kind of documentation, and some of that would probably be easily verified through employment or through other means to make sure. So we're not just focused on kind of a narrative of a student saying that they did this.
And what we've also found is that those portfolio submissions are often accompanied with a conversation or interview with a student about the work that they're presenting. So there are opportunities to ask pointed questions about the work that's presented, in addition to the documentation that Alicia mentioned, to ensure that the work really represents what the student has done, and if they can speak knowledgeably about the work, how they arrived at the work that they presented, you can determine whether or not it was manufactured via the technology versus really a reflection of the work that they're doing. Pretty much the same things that you do when a student submits a paper, and you might have some questions about its authenticity. So I do have this question here, Alicia, about I think to follow up on the resources you mentioned for faculty. Some of those trainings and micro courses are for members, and others are available to anyone. So in the resources that we send out, Kimberly, we will note the information that's available to anyone, and also how you can learn more about other free resources that are available to you as well. All right, we're closing in on the last 10 minutes. Any additional questions that we haven't responded to? I'm surprised nobody's asked about military CPL. We have questions about that a lot. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that if the question doesn't come up, but okay, here's a question about military. I'd love a first win with CPL, particularly with military training. I understand that ACE has credit recommendations, but we haven't found a particular training that aligns with any of our classes. That's therefore the best we've been able to do is offer general credit. Thank you. I think, thank you. I wasn't checking the Q&A, so I will look at that in a moment. Yes, thank you so much for that military question. Alicia, do you want to respond to that one about how to facilitate military assessments?
So I'm not sure if they're asking for, for first wins from other folks in the in there, but oh yeah, there is the Kale Military Community of Practice, which is great. I mean, I think, sometimes general credit is where it fits in at the institution. And I think some of that might just depend on the type of institution and the courses offered, as well as the type of students that are coming to the institution. But and if there are a lot of students that are coming with the same training and we're still not finding any place for that to go but the general credit, or if it's just kind of, we're getting different types of experience. But I definitely think that sometimes general credit, depending on the type of institution, is where CPL goes. We always, prefer CPL to apply to a student's major, but oftentimes, depending on what the student's major is, that might not necessarily be possible. But that's still helping the student meet their general education credits and still moving them toward a degree program faster. But there might be some other institutions who have direct experience that might be able to share some of those wins in the chat.
And one of the things we noticed in our work with the 5 HBCUs is North Carolina has a military community of practice, the state of North Carolina system office that has done some work to articulate military related credit to various courses offered within the state, and then made that a statewide resource for institutions. So looking for those types of resources that, or learning from some of your colleagues if you have questions about what this might align with, makes sense as another way to figure out, are there other ways for us to be thinking about military credit if it's not specifically related to a particular occupational pathway. There's a question about, do you recommend a cap on the amount of credit provided for CPL? Do CPL credits go towards majors, minors, or only electives?
Okay, so it sounds like there's two questions. So in general, what we've seen is there's some accreditors that have a cap of about 25%. No more than 25% can come through CPL, but that's really an institutional or state level or whoever your governing body is. I mean, you do obviously want many institutions have residency requirements, so you have to kind of weigh all of those things. within the program and within any accrediting bodies and regional or disciplinary uh, accrediting bodies. And the second part of that question was, do we recommend it for general?
Majors, minors, or electives. Mhm.
So, I think the goal is really to have it go toward, the major. If they're being able to use CPL for maybe some of the introductory level courses, then they're able to take some of the, more higher level courses that they might find more relevant, more engaging. Oftentimes faculty like to teach these courses. And so that is kind of the ideal world of CPL. In reality, where we can find sometimes it does go to the general category. And so again, that's I think a hotly debatable topic. But again, Kel, in the perfect world, we want it to go toward the major, but sometimes depending on the experience and depending on the institutional offerings, it does end up in that general credit bucket. I think we want to avoid just automatically seeing CPL and assigning it to general electives, but we want to, be mindful and try to apply it to the major when feasible.
Mhm. And there are certainly some examples of when that aligns much more easily. For instance, we know that Elizabeth City State University has an aviation program, and they accept aviation licenses as they provide credit for students who come in with aviation licenses. That's clearly aligned with the major of that program, and so it goes directly to some of the particular major level courses. As one example. So we have another question here about, and I'm not quite sure, Wanda, this is from Wanda Gibson. So Wanda, please help me if I don't get this right. You're saying you're getting pushback from students wanting to develop a portfolio, but they don't want to take the three credit course for guidance. Any suggestions on how to engage the students around that?
Are they having to pay for I have lots of, I think, follow-up questions to this, and I can see both ways. A lot of times portfolios can be more work than a class. And so we've seen that at some institutions where they've said the students would just rather take the class than doing the portfolio. Kale does recommend that there is some kind of guidance when putting together a portfolio. I think it's helpful. If it's a 3 credit hour course, is it counting toward their degree program? Is it, is there a fee involved? Is it, I guess is there specific hesitancy about the course? Are they not being able to take other courses because they're taking the 3 credit hours? So I think again, I can see both sides to that, but I do think there has to be some kind of guidance, because one of the things that we have seen is a lot of institutions where there is not a portfolio course, the students they don't know what to necessarily put together. And so the course helps. A lot of institutions have also done, like sample portfolios to help the students guide through. But I guess my first question is just kind of looking at that portfolio course and what are the guidelines, and what is the pushback in terms of taking the course.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, but
I think
yeah,
Wanda said you
definitely.
hit it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, thank you, Wanda. So yes, there were a few questions about if you're interested in the technical assistance that we talked about, feel free to reach out to Alicia and I. If you could go to that page, Alicia, with our contact information, or have any other questions, we're happy to answer them or connect you with some of our members. Our members are, we call them practitioner experts. Many of them are learning a lot and really exhibiting quite a bit of expertise through the work that they're doing on the ground. So we're also happy to connect you to folks who may be doing something that you're trying to do if you haven't made a connection on this call. So feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in learning more. And there was a question about how many individuals at an institution. I think up to 20 individuals at your institution, if you're a KIL member, can be designated as those who have access to the Member Hub and all the various resources and webinars. So please get in touch with us if you need to be added to your institution's list of members. We can put you in contact with the right people on our membership team. So I'm loving this conversation about additional resources around or examples around portfolio development and also around how to evaluate military credit. We work very closely with Dallas Kratzer around our military community of practice as well. And so if there are other questions you have about that, we can certainly put you in touch with that community of practice too. So in our final couple of minutes, let me just take a moment to thank you all so much. This has been a very lively discussion about CPL strategy. We hope that it's helpful for those of you who are preparing to or recently launched programs. And as I said, we will be circulating all of these resources along with the slides to you shortly. But thank you so much for your active engagement. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week.